The galactic hall of unity was filled with light at daybreak, silver light reflecting off the marble floor and tall glass pillars. Hundreds of alien nobles gathered from dozens of worlds. They had come to witness the introduction of a new species to the Union, humanity. At the far end of the hall, a tall man stood alone among strange faces. He was human, broad-shouldered, dark-haired, and wearing the gray uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps. His name was Elias Ward, and though his steps were calm, he could feel the weight of every stare around him. Humans were newcomers in the galaxy. They came from a small, dangerous world called Earth, a planet that many advanced species called DEATHWORLD. Most in that hall thought humans were wild, primitive, even barbaric. At the center of the hall, sitting on a crystal throne, was Princess Neray of the Tethari Empire, the host of this ceremony. Her silver crown glowed beneath the hall's lights, and her blue skin shimmered like ice. Her people were among the oldest and most respected in the galaxy. Her words carried power across the stars. When Elias stepped forward to speak, his voice was calm and clear. "Honored delegates of the Union," he said softly, "I bring greetings from Earth and from the people of my world. We come not with weapons or demands, but with hands open for peace." A low murmur spread through the audience.
Ow.
Some aliens smiled politely. Others whispered with amused expressions. The Tethari laughed openly. To them, this human's words sounded naive, almost childish. Princess Neray raised an elegant brow. "You come from a world of storms and beasts," she said, her voice sharp but graceful. "And yet you speak of peace as if you know its meaning?" The court laughed with her. The sound echoed across the marble floor, cold and cruel. Elias didn't flinch. He simply bowed his head slightly. "Peace," he said, "is not given by calm skies. It is forged in storms." Her smile faded for a moment. But then she laughed again. "Such bold words," she said. "Perhaps your kind will learn wisdom when your storms destroy you." More laughter. The humans standing behind Elias shifted. Uneasily, but he lifted his hands slightly, telling them to stay silent. His face remained calm. He did not fight back. When the laughter faded, he looked up and said quietly, "Time will answer for me, Princess. I will not." The chamber went silent for a brief moment. No one understood his words then, but those words would one day echo across the stars. Years of silence time passed. Decades rolled by like waves. Humanity changed but quietly. While the great empires argued over politics and trade, humans worked. They built ships faster than before. They terraformed barren moons, explored regions others had abandoned. They learned. They adapted. They survived. And they remembered Elias Ward retired from the diplomatic corps 20 years after that day in the Tethari court. He lived quietly near the mountains of old Earth, tending to a small garden. Reporters sometimes asked for interviews, but he always refused. He spoke little about that day, only saying, it was a lesson worth learning for both sides. His silence became part of human legend. Children studied it in schools as a story about dignity and patience. "Never fight hatred with hatred," their teachers said. "Let time be your witness." Meanwhile, far across the galaxy, the Tethari Empire began to weaken. Their systems suffered droughts, rebellions, and disease. Their royal line lost influence. The once proud nobles who had laughed at humans now argued among themselves. Still, they clung to their pride, and then came the plague of Vorzeza, strange infection that spread through Tethari worlds. It attacked their nervous systems, leaving victims weak and fading. Their scientists searched for a cure, but every attempt failed. One by one, their colonies fell silent. Their grand fleets stopped moving. And in the middle of that darkness, an aging queen called out to her daughter Princess Neray. The return of the Princess Nerea was no longer the bright, proud woman of her youth. Silver hair framed her tired face, and her once sharp voice had softened with regret. The memory of that day in the Hall of Unity still haunted her. She had mocked a man who had shown nothing but respect. Now, she was forced to do what her pride had always feared: ask humans for help. Her ship landed on Earth after weeks of diplomatic requests. The humans agreed to a meeting. No guards, no weapons, just a formal talk in Geneva City, now a center of the Galactic Union's medical council. As the ship door opened, Neray stepped out into the cool air. The human sky was blue and calm, and the sound of birds filled the air. She expected to see a young diplomat or a medical officer waiting. Instead, she saw a man older, hair gray now, but still standing, tall and steady. Her breath caught in her throat. It was him, Lias Ward. He was older, but the calm strength in his eyes was the same. He smiled faintly, as if time had changed everything except his patience. "Princess Neray," he said softly. "It's been a long time." She stared at him in silence. Her throat felt tight. "You remember me?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I remember the day," Elias replied gently. "Not the pain, only the lesson." The meeting, they sat across from each other in a quiet room made of glass and steel. Outside, Earth's mountains stood like guardians in the distance. For a moment, Nera could not speak. Her royal training had prepared her for war, diplomacy, and betrayal, but not this kind of humility. "I came," she said finally, "to ask for help. Our people are dying." Elias listened without interruption. He did not smile, but his eyes softened. "We know," he said. "Your world sent signals weeks ago. Our med teams already started research." Her head lifted in surprise. "You knew? And you? You helped without condition?" He nodded once. "There's no condition in saving lives, Princess. We learned that long ago." Neray looked down at her hands. For a moment, the memory of her laughter in that ancient hall filled her mind. She had thought humans were beneath her, creatures of instinct and chaos. But now their kindness felt like something deeper than pride or power. "Why?" she whispered. "Why would you help those who mocked you?" Elias smiled faintly. "'Cause your people are suffering. And suffering erases the lines between races." She stared at him, words failing her. For the first time in her life, she felt small, not from shame, but from realization. She had spent her youth believing that strength came from titles and crowns. But now, she saw that real strength was quiet, patient, and kind. Echoes of the past for several days. Nera remained on Earth as her delegation worked with human scientists. Everywhere she went, she saw cooperation and unity. Humans worked side by side with aliens of all species that once refused to speak to each other. There was no arrogance here, no endless speeches, only progress. She often found herself walking near the gardens behind the medical center. That was where she saw Elias most evenings, tending to plants like an old farmer. One evening, she gathered courage and walked toward him. "You never answered me," she said softly. "When I asked why you never spoke against me," Elias didn't look up immediately. He trimmed a small flower and then said, "I didn't stay silent for you, Princess. I stayed silent for us. Words can win arguments, but silence sometimes wins hearts." She looked at him quietly and did it. He smiled again, still gentle. "You're here, aren't you?" Her lips trembled, and she had to look away. The night air was cool, and for the first time, she felt something like peace. Stories spread word of the Tetheri arrival spread across the galaxy. Many remembered the old story how the proud princess had once mocked the human envoy. Now, she had returned to ask for aid. Some alien leaders expected Earth to refuse. Others waited for revenge. But the humans didn't either. They simply worked. A fleet of human medical ships flew to Tetheri space, bringing supplies and doctors. The news channels across the galaxy called it the Echo Response. Reporters tried to get statements from Elias Ward, but he refused interviews again. He stayed behind the scenes, coordinating quietly, letting others take the praise, among both humans and aliens. Whispers grew about the man who once said, "Time will answer for me." And now, time had indeed spoken. Neray began writing letters to her people. In one, she said, "We thought strength was power, but the humans taught us that strength is grace under insult. The one we mocked became our teacher." Those words spread faster than the plague itself. They became a song, then a proverb, then a part of history. The final conversation before Neray returned home. She asked for one last meeting with Elias. They met again in the same quiet room where it had all begun. "My people owe you everything," she said softly. Elias shook his head. "You owe nothing. The universe has a way of bringing lessons back to where they belong." Nerey's eyes glimmered with unshed tears. "If I could return to that day, if I could take back my words," he stopped her with a calm hand. "Don't. If you took them back, maybe we wouldn't have learned patience. Maybe we would have become proud too soon. The past hurt us both, but it also built something better." She lowered her gaze. "You are far wiser than any royal I have met." "I'm just a man," Elias said. "Sometimes a man has to let silence speak for him." When her ship rose into the sky, Nara stood by the window, watching the blue planet fade below her. She remembered his words. She remembered his calm. She remembered his silence. And deep in her heart, the echo of that silence grew louder than any applause she had ever received. The Tetheri fleet hung in orbit above Earth, its silver hulls glinting against the blue of the planet below. Inside one of the ships, Princess Nere stood before a large viewing screen. Her eyes fixed on the image of Earth's clouds turning slowly beneath her. She felt the hum of the engines and the quiet pulse of fear in her heart. She had come to Earth as a desperate leader. Now she was leaving as something else, a student of humility. Behind her, a soft chime echoed through the chamber doors. When she turned, she found Elias Ward standing there, hands clasped behind his back, his gray hair shining faintly in the light. "You didn't have to come to see me off," she said softly. Elias smiled. "I wanted to. The cure is ready. It will reach your homeworld in a few hours." Her throat tightened. "You did all this for us? After what I did to you?" Elias shook his head. "You did what you thought was right back then. Pride is part of learning, Princess. Even humans struggled with it once." She stepped closer. "I remember what you said that day in the hall. Time will answer for me. I never understood it. Now I think I do. Time didn't answer for you, it answered for us." Elias looked away, watching the endless stars beyond the window. Maybe time just gave us both a chance to listen. The curing worlds when Nere returned to her empire. She carried with her thousands of crates of medicine. Human scientists had not only created a cure for the plague, they had improved it, ensuring it would adapt to future mutations. But they didn't stop there. They sent volunteer doctors, engineers, and teachers to rebuild what disease had broken. At first, many Tetheri nobles were suspicious. They whispered behind her back, saying the humans are taking advantage of us. But those whispers faded when the first cured children opened their eyes. The cries of fear turned into songs of relief. Elias Ward stayed behind on Earth, refusing all credit. He told the Union media it was a team effort. But everyone knew the truth. His calm leadership had made the cooperation possible. Meanwhile, Nere began recording her experiences in a journal. Each entry started with a memory of her past arrogance and ended with a lesson she had learned through Elias. One entry read, "I thought power meant control. But humans taught me that true power is choosing mercy, even when you could choose pride." Another read, "He never shouted, never punished, never gloated. Yet every word from his silence carried more meaning than my speeches ever did." The first visit months later. After the plague was defeated, Nere requested another visit to Earth. This time, she came not as a desperate leader, but as a friend. When she landed in Geneva again, there was no royal ceremony, no fanfare. She walked through the medical gardens where she had last seen Elias. He was there, sitting by a small fountain, feeding the birds that had gathered near him. "You look better," he said, smiling when she approached. "I look older," she said, laughing softly. "And wiser, I hope." Elias handed her a small piece of bread, motioning toward the birds. "They don't care if we are kings or farmers. They just care that we share." Nere smiled, watching the small creatures hop around her. "Your people are strange, Elias Ward. You never demanded tribute. You never took revenge. You never even asked for recognition." He shrugged gently. "Because recognition doesn't heal anyone. You came here seeking help, and we gave it. That's enough." She looked at him for a long moment. "You really believe kindness can fix everything?" No, he said quietly, but it can start something better. The Council's decision some months later, the Galactic Union Council called an emergency session. Rumors spread that the humans' medical technology had become the most advanced in the galaxy. The Union wanted to appoint a new chief humanitarian director to guide interspecies relief programs. Every delegate expected Earth to nominate one of their young scientists. But when the nomination list was opened, T3 delegation submitted a name, Elias Ward. The chamber fell silent. Even the oldest counselors leaned forward in surprise. A representative from the Driskin Alliance whispered, "The same man that Tathari once mocked?" "Yes," Nire said clearly. "The same man whose silence changed my people forever." When Elias entered the hall, the memory of his humiliation 25 years earlier seemed to hang in the air. He saw familiar faces, and some who had once laughed at him. But this time, they did not laugh. They stood, the Tetheri Queen, old and weak now, watched through the Council's holographic feed. Her eyes filled with tears as she saw her daughter bow before the human she had once insulted. "On behalf of the Tetheri Empire," Nire said, her voice steady, "we ask this man to lead us toward a better age." Elias paused before speaking. His voice was calm, almost like a whisper. "I don't lead nations," he said. "I help them listen." The chamber erupted in applause. Legacy of patience years passed again. The galaxy entered a new age of cooperation. The Human Restoration Corps grew into a powerful network of aid and rebuilding. It was no longer about power, it was about unity. Elias rarely appeared in public. He lived simply, still tending gardens, still writing letters to young diplomats who wanted to learn from him. Many of his students later said the same thing. He never taught us how to win. He taught us how to understand. Nire often visited Earth, sometimes with her council, sometimes alone. Each visit deepened her respect for humanity. One day, while walking through the gardens again, she told Elias, "Do you know what they call you now, in the outer colonies?" He smiled faintly. "I'm afraid to ask." "They call you the Silent Teacher. They say you proved that calm hearts can change empires." Elias chuckled. "Titles fade, Princess. Even legends fade. What matters is what remains when the echoes stop." She nodded quietly. "And what will remain, Elias?" "Hope," he said softly. "If we're lucky, kindness too, the gift of silence before returning home one last time." Nara brought Elias a small silver pendant engraved with the Tetheri crest. "It belonged to my mother," she said. "She asked that I give it to you. It's a symbol of humility and gratitude." Elias accepted it with a small nod. "Thank her for me. But tell her the real gift is peace between our people." As she turned to leave, he added, "Do you ever regret that day, the first time we met?" She looked back at him, eyes full of emotion. "Every day. But then I remember how your silence healed what my pride destroyed. Maybe I needed that moment to become who I am now." Leah smiled. "Then maybe I needed it too." The final message a decade later, Elias Ward passed away quietly in his sleep, surrounded by friends and former students. His funeral was attended by representatives from over 100 species. Ships filled Earth's orbit, and for the first time in galactic history, every flag of every world flew at half-mast. Princess Nara came herself, wearing a simple robe instead of royal garments. She stood before his memorial stone, which was carved with his words from long ago. "The loudest voice fades, but silence, if it stands for peace, echoes forever." As the ceremony ended, she placed the silver pendant on his grave and whispered, "You were right, Elias Ward. Time answered for you, and for all of us." That night, she looked up at the stars. Somewhere among them, she felt as if his calm presence was still watching, still teaching, still reminding the galaxy that patience was not weakness, but strength. Epilogue: the children of the Echo 50 years later. Children on both Tathari and human worlds learned about Elias Ward in school, but not as a hero of war, as a man of peace. Teachers told them the story of how one man's silence reshaped the stars. There were statues built. Yes, but the humans never made them grand or covered in gold. They were simple: a tall man standing quietly, hands folded, looking at the horizon. At the base of each statue were the words, "He did not conquer. He understood." The Theri Empire changed forever. Ni-Ra became known as the Queen of Renewal. She led her people into a golden age of peace, building hospitals, schools, and trade routes with Earth. But in every speech she gave, she began with a phrase that became her promise: "Let silence remind us who we were and who we must become." The unseen monument many years after Elias's passing, explorers discovered something deep beneath the mountains of old Earth, a sealed garden, untouched for decades. Inside was a small bench, a watering can, and a single plaque. It bore no name, only a short line carved into the stone: "If peace ever fades, listen to the silence again." Scholars and leaders from across the galaxy visited that quiet place. No grand speeches were made there. No political banners flew. Only the wind moved through the leaves, whispering softly like a voice that refused to die. Among those who came one day was an elderly Ni-Ra, her steps slow but steady. She stood before the bench, touching the stone with trembling fingers. "You kept your promise, old friend," she whispered. "Your silence still speaks." She sat there for hours as the sun dipped below the horizon. And when she finally stood to leave, she left behind something small, a feather from a Tetheri royal cloak. Resting beside the plaque, it fluttered in the breeze for a moment, then settled, as if bowing to the man who had changed the stars with nothing but patience and grace. The eternal echo generations later, when humans and Tethari worked together on distant colonies, they told each other a story, a legend, really. It was about a man who had once been mocked in a hall full of laughter, and who had answered not with anger, but with silence so deep that it reached the edge of time.